Hi, today I'd like to talk about military life as being its own type of culture that I'm a part of. Military life is something that not everyone can be a part of because not everyone knows someone that's in the military or is dealing with military life themselves. Because it's very different for families and that are not living with the member than those that are the immediate family members, like the wife or the kids, because they actually have to deal with all the military stuff themselves as well. This speech can benefit anybody because some people may just be learning that they're having a loved one that's going to be joining, or they might think about joining themselves. And this can provide some information about how military life can be different and what it's like. Military life can be very difficult from civilian life, and it can have many benefits and have many difficult things tied together with it. I'd like to touch on each of these subjects today. Military life is different from civilian life in many different ways. One way, for sure, is that the time is different. You deal with military time. You need to know what 1800 is. You need to know what 2200 is, because that's usually the response that you'll get from anybody. This is the time you need to be there, 1800. And so it can be difficult, especially if you are also dealing with things off base. Another thing that's different than civilian life is the fact that usually it's not your choice on the fact that you're leaving. Yes, you may have joined, but it may not be your choice to go as far away from family as you wanted to, because you might have put down that you'd like to go to a base that's closer to home, but they might not have room for you and they may have to put you away from family. And it can be very difficult to deal with because you don't have the choice to just get up and move back home. There are many different benefits to being a part of military life. One benefit is health insurance. For the military member themselves, they are fully covered for everything that I know of. And that can be very helpful for those military members who may have vision problems, then they can go get them corrected, or if they have any type of injuries, it can be very helpful. I myself am also covered being a spouse, and I am fully covered medically that I know of. I don't ever have to pay a co-pay or anything, and usually with prescriptions, the highest you ever have to pay is $22, and the only prescriptions I've ever had were free for me. Another benefit to military life is travel. You get to see the world most of the time because you get to put down a list of preferences for bases that you like to go to, and sometimes you can opt to go places while you're at a different base. And a good thing about travel is, as the Department of Defense states, the military has bases in Hawaii, Japan, Germany, England, Italy, Spain, and other unique locations. I myself have a friend who's getting ready to go over to Japan with her husband, who is in the military, and they're very ecstatic about it because they just are ready to see different parts of the world. So if that's something that you want to be a part of and you would really love to see other parts of the world, meet new people, then military life can be a definite benefit to you. Another benefit is childcare. Most bases and posts provide childcare for their members and families. Not all, but most. And usually it can be found cheaper than something you might find off base, just depending on where you go. The MilitaryOneSource.com states that the Department of Defense has the largest employer-sponsored child care system in the U.S., and it's still growing. Now, this doesn't mean that you're always going to be able to get in, because I know of people at Tyndall Air Force Base that themselves have to be put on a waiting list to wait, because sometimes there are a large demand for people to watch your kids, and there may not be enough people to cover. Now I want to move on to some of the more difficult things about being a part of military life. One of the most difficult things is dealing with deployment or any type of separation from family. Deployment is the most difficult because you can't even take a spouse or a child with you. You're going to go overseas and you're going to be a part of the war. And this can be hard for members, and it can be hard for them families just as much, or maybe even possibly harder. From USAA, it says spouses remaining at home must care for children, handle finances, manage the household, and make many important decisions on their own. And this can be very difficult for some families when the member is the one who dealt with the finances, or they weren't used to making decisions on their own, and now they have to because they can't always get in contact with their loved one. Other separation comes from things such as basic training, and this is usually about 6 weeks, and usually sometimes longer. It just depends on the branch that you go into. And sometimes in basic training, if you are a part of a group that gets in trouble a lot, then you may not even be able to write home, might not be able to call. When my husband was he's in the Air Force currently, and when he went in, he was gone, and I got letters usually once a week, and I got a phone call every 3 weeks maybe, and it was usually for about 2 minutes at a time because they are stressed and busy in basic training. Another difficult thing to deal with is the fact that you can't always do things your way. You have to do it the military way, because you might want to go home, but your husband can't get time off because they need him in order to get things done, which is the same thing with a job, but sometimes it just gets a little bit more difficult because you don't know what they're dealing with at work. Another thing that's difficult with the moving around a lot is the fact that you make friends and then sometimes they're gone within a short amount of time, and it's really difficult for some people to deal with. I myself haven't had to move around much. I just came here last year because I married my husband after he had gotten in, but it's been a joy learning about everything. And I always keep this with me on my keychain, and it says Air Force, just to remind me of my husband and what he's doing. Military life can be very joyful and very hard to deal with, and it just depends on how you deal with things. There are many great websites that you can go to find support for things that you might be dealing with, like deployment. You can find blogs from other military wives. It's a great thing to be a part of. And I hope I gave some good information about my culture, or my subculture. Thank you.